Hi, my name's Olivia Arthur. I'm a photographer from London. I've been working as a photographer for 20 odd years now. I've traveled a lot, I've been to many different places and photographed many different things. And this work that we have on view here is, for me, represents, I suppose, a little bit of a turning point in my approach to photography. And it starts in a way with this photograph here of my pregnant belly. So when I was pregnant with my first child, I started making photographs closer to home. And I also started to be fascinated with the body and the relationship that we have to our own bodies, how we feel comfortable in our own skin, how we, what makes us feel comfortable in our own skin, and what place we need to be in to feel that way. So I started making work that was about, it was portraiture. It was about looking for that feeling that people have when they feel either alone or with a partner, this intimacy of feeling themselves. And so it's really about looking for that very quiet moment of reflection. And I started exploring it, and the work then becomes also about exploring sexuality, exploring identity, gender identity, and I continued exploring these different themes for many years, and the work took me along to a place where I started to photograph different, looking at the body in a different way. So, for example, looking at technology and how we can integrate technology into our body, or use it to repair our body or to enhance our body. And so, in a way, I found myself on a different path, and I found myself photographing robots. But I tried to take the same approach. So I would go to photographing robots with the same, using my large format camera, making a portrait in the same kind of intentional way. So this image here is of a man called Alex Lewis, who I met in the UK. So Alex had lost all of his limbs and part of his face when he fell ill, and he now has one prosthetic arm that he can use all the time, and he's working on being able to use more. But the thing about Alex that was really incredible for me when I met him is that it's not the technology that he uses in order to create a bit of mobility again for himself. It's something that comes from inside. So he now does things that he'd never dreamed of doing before. He climbs mountains, he goes on huge journeys across continents, and he says that the accident or the illness is the best thing that ever happened to him, even though he has no legs and no arms anymore. So he's quite an incredible, very inspiring person in that way. So this is Professor Ishiguro. He is a Japanese scientist who works in robotics. He's actually the maker of quite a few of the robots that I've photographed throughout this project. And this is him with his Geminoid robot. So he made a robot in his own likeness. So this is photographed in Japan. This is one of Professor Ishiguro's robots. He's called Telenoid. So Telenoid is a robot that you can hold, and he has cameras in his eyes, and somebody somewhere else on a computer can talk to you, and the robot talks to you, and the robot can hug you. And so the idea is to make this experience of talking to someone remotely feel physical. So, and it maps the face of the person on the computer, and the robot's face moves to imitate them. And so this idea that, this idea of having a physical closeness. And so I was looking for that feeling of tenderness between somebody holding this robot and somebody, and the robot. So down here is another one that's interesting. So this picture was made in Spain, and it's a place called Babiclon, I think it's called, and there is a woman there who makes these very lifelike dolls. So they're dolls, you know, they feel, they're heavy like real babies, and so you can hold them and look after them. This one has eyes that can follow you around, and it has a breathing. And I think it's very fascinating. I mean, there's a whole world out there of people making these kinds of dolls, and there's a world out there of people, I guess predominantly women, who buy them and want them and have them as it can be a replacement or instead of having a child, and they're quite amazing pieces of artwork in themselves, because they do look very real, even if they can feel somewhat creepy. I think it's it tells an amazing story about us as humans, because we can feel love for something like this, because it makes us feel that it's a real baby, or even though we know it's not a real baby, it gives us this feeling. It rewards us. It reacts to us, and I felt you feel emotionally attached by the end of it, and it's interesting to know. So I learned a lot about how we can react to these ideas even when we know that they're not real. And it's been a fascinating journey, and I've seen some incredible things, but I do find myself at the end coming back to the human, and the need for a real human contact. I think that is fundamental. I think it's something that we will discover during the pandemic, of course, is that we do need genuine human contact, and that it's very important for our health and well-being.
So I'm Myriam Boulos. I'm a Lebanese photographer. I'm based in Lebanon, and I have always lived there. When I was 5 years old, I had this small fuchsia camera that I loved. And one day, we were in the car with my family, and my younger brother took the camera and threw it away from the car window on the highway. And I remember very clearly this feeling. It felt like, when you're washing your hands and the soap slides away from your hands. It was as if literally reality escaped from me. And 10 years later, when I was 16, I met a girl at school who became one of my closest friends, and she had this sophisticated camera. And one day I told my parents I want this camera, and my mom told me, of course not. Like, you first have to learn to look at things, and then you'll get the camera later. And from this moment, I started using photography to get closer to reality. And from my first pictures, my approach was a mix of documentary and personal journaling, kind of. And during the first years as a photographer, I only took pictures at night. I have this feeling like the nightlife is kind of like revolutions. It's a way of collectively exteriorizing things that we are taught to bottle up and keep in us. And then in October 2019, a few years ago, the revolution started in Lebanon. And for me, it felt like collectively coming out of an abusive relationship to finally say, no, this is not normal. And documenting the revolution was my way of taking part in it. And today, the work you're seeing is a mix of images, it brings together images that I took from 2013 to 2023. And all of these images are a way of resisting and kind of fighting for liberation. It's like intertwined revolutions that go from the intimate to the political. This picture was taken in August 2020 after the Beirut port explosion. And it was during one of the very violent protests. And you can see on the picture, on the torso of the man that is photographed, that the police used birdshot pellets on the protesters. And for me, this picture is important for me also because there's a contradiction between the context and also the tattoo of the guy that says Amira, which means princess. This picture for me represents everything I'm looking for in photography. It's a mix of resistance, tenderness, proximity. And it's important for me because it's kind of the moment where my images, like my photographic approach, became much more collaborative. The picture was taken during the first days of the revolution, and it was taken in the Grand Theater in Beirut. It's a theater, like it's a space in which a lot of huge stars performed. And during the civil war in Lebanon, the space became, like it had many functions, and it ended up being controlled by the government. And during the beginning of the revolution, we, the protesters, we reclaimed the space. And I did not show this picture for like 2 years, and I showed it after many long conversations with the people in the picture, after being sure that we want to show it to the world and we want to take this risk together.